Well, when Australians go through the annual chore of getting their cars registered, most don't give much thought to the CTP insurance or green slips that would cover them in case of a catastrophic accident, but they should. The rules vary from state to state, meaning, for example, if you swerve to miss a kangaroo and were badly injured, some states will cover your medical costs for life and some won't. As the National Disability Scheme rolls out, there's a push for harmonisation of CTP cover across the country, but some states are dragging their feet with potentially dire implications. Social Affairs correspondent Norman Hermont reports.
Oops.
In their early 20s, both Millie Parker on the left and Carl Champney on the right were in devastating car accidents. Both suffered brain injuries, but that is where the similarities end. Their cases illustrate the vast gulf in care for victims, depending on which state accidents occur. Millie Parker survived this wreck. Her only good fortune that it happened in Victoria. Under the state's no-fault liability scheme, she was automatically covered for rehabilitation and care. No court proceedings, no lawyers, and no delays.
Undeniably, access to rehab is undisputed. How critical that is.
For more than 2 decades, Victoria's liability scheme has paid for everything from speech therapy to physical rehabilitation to visits by neuropsychologists. Another state, a very different outcome. 13 years ago, Carl Champney was a self-declared petrol head. An accident in his ute left him with a brain injury and muscular control issues. He wasn't able to prove legally that he was not at fault. In Queensland, that meant he received no compensation. His family says his rehabilitation has been woefully inadequate.
Had he had the treatment and the right therapy from day one, he would possibly be not living in a nursing home, he would be home.
As it is, Carl Champney is only now learning to walk in a frame, something he says he should have mastered years ago. He has no doubts how his life now would be different if he lived in a state with a no-fault liability system.
I know I would be better off.
Every day, millions of motorists hit the road, and those that do think about third-party liability probably believe as long as they're paid up, they're covered. But third-party liability and coverage after a catastrophic accident is nowhere near that simple. On July 1st, South Australia and the ACT joined existing no-fault states, leaving only Western Australia and Queensland with at-fault schemes. Drivers from no-fault states like New South Wales are now covered in other no-fault states, but that doesn't hold true if the driver from a no-fault state travels to Western Australia or Queensland, and it gets more confusing from there. NDIS board member John Walsh was one of the architects of the New South Wales no-fault scheme, introduced in 2005. He says he's disappointed that after decades of trying, motor vehicle liability is still not harmonized across the country.
I find it hard to understand why states don't see the value in providing good quality support for twice as many people for very little or no extra cost.
Cost is an issue in Western Australia and Queensland, which boasts some of the lowest compulsory third-party insurance premiums in the country. Both states say they are considering options on adopting no-fault schemes, perhaps to coincide with the rollout of the NDIS. Millie Parker says she's still amazed that care and recovery can vary so greatly in the same country.
We talk about the two-tiered system and how I've won this so-called lottery, and I have. And again, how is that possible in Australia?
In the struggle to recover after his accident, that's a question Carl Champney has also asked many times. Norman Hermont, Laidline.